Hello friends, welcome to Viju Guys Teaching Cafe. This is a short video lecture on the theme Institutional Approach to Politics. We have been discussing approaches to political science, particularly the traditional approaches. This is another aspect of the traditional approach, institutional approach to politics. Friends, since the ancient world, man has been preoccupied with the idea of social institutions. Ancient Greeks and the Romans were particularly interested in searching for best institutions, good institutions that promote good life, best life, institutions that promote ethical and moral life. That is why Parthenon, an ancient temple in Greece, has become almost synonyms for the idea of democratic values. That is also the reason why many leaders of democracies like to be photographed among the ruins of Parthenon. So, in the famous dialogue of Plato, the founding father of Greek philosophy, Socrates was also his teacher. In his dialogues, Plato portrayed Socrates as hugely pessimistic about the whole business of democracy, the whole institutions of democracy. In Book 6 of the Republic, that was Plato's one of the best books, Plato describes Socrates engaged in conversations with a character called Adeimantus. Socrates was trying to make Adeimantus to see the flaws, the defects, the problems of democracy by comparing democracy to a ship. He compared democracy to a ship. You imagine society as a ship in a storming ocean, says Socrates to Adeimantus. And Socrates asked Adeimantus, who would you want to decide who was in charge of the vessel in the storming sea? If this opportunity is being given to Adeimantus to decide who will take charge of the vessel in the storming sea, and Socrates also gives Adeimantus two options. One is just anyone who can decide who will steer the ship. Socrates gives another option, or people educated in the rules and demands of seafaring. Of course, any person who has some kind of sense will choose for the second option that has been given by Socrates. And Adeimantus also said that yes, it is later, that people who are aware of the rules and demands of seafaring. Then Socrates further asked Adeimantus another very interesting and important question. Why then do we keep thinking that any old person should be fit enough to judge who should be a ruler of a country, that is the reigning democracy? In ancient Greece, elderly people were considered idle enough to take decisions and cast votes. Socrates' point is very clear. He says that voting in election is a skill. It is a skill that is not a random intuition. Voting is not a random intuition. Voting is a skill. Like any other skill, this skill needs to be taught systematically through right educational system. Letting the citizen to vote without proper education, proper awareness and proper skill is just like you letting elderly people decide who would be idle enough to steer the ship of the society. Look at the analogy Socrates made in order to convince Adeimantus that you need to learn how to vote. Otherwise, it is just like you are giving the opportunity to decide. Any people can get the opportunity to decide who will steer the ship in a storming sea. It is an irresponsible act according to Socrates. Friends, ancient Athens had a painful experience of demagogues. For example, Socrates was aware of Alcibiades, a rich, charismatic, smooth-talking, wealthy man who manipulated to push Athens to a disastrous military adventure in Sicily. It's a part of the present day Italy. Socrates was aware that it was because of this politician, Alcibiades, who had no prior skill in the art of government, the art of military, in the art of politics. Athens had a disastrous result in the military adventure in Sicily. So Socrates knew how easily people can exploit, manipulate the thinking of ordinary citizens. So Socrates knew that you can easily exploit the desires of other people by using flowery language, rhetorics. So flowery words can simply manipulate your mind. So this can be well effectively executed in democracy, Socrates opined. So Socrates further asked his friends, his students, to imagine an election debate between two candidates. You imagine, Socrates says, you imagine two candidates in an election, they are engaged in the election debate. One candidate was a doctor. The other candidate was a sweet shop owner. The sweet shop owner would comment about his rival in this way. Socrates is going to say how a sweet shop owner will be saying about his opponent, that is the doctor, in an election debate. The sweet shop owner would say like this: look, this person, that is the doctor, has worked many evils upon you. He hurts you, gives you bitter portions, and tells you not to eat, not to drink whatever you like. He will never serve you feast of many and varied pleasant things like I will. Friends, Socrates asked his followers to consider about the audience responses to this comment of the sweet shop owner in the election debate. Friends, do you think the doctor would be able to reply effectively in the public gathering face to face? The true answer of the doctor might be like this: I cause you trouble and go against your desires and interest in order to help you. Friends, do you think this reply of the doctor would bring him votes in a democratic situation? Socrates was aware that people are not skilled enough to judge the merit of rulers in democracy. Friends, why I said all these stories about Plato, Socrates, his analogy of society to a ship, his analogy of doctor and sweet shop owner in an election debate, is to remind you the relevance of Socratic method, an ancient method in political science, in evaluating the merits of the present day institutions, the present day political institutions, such as legislature, cabinet, judiciary, political parties. We have forgotten all about Socratic methods or Socrates' warning against the defects of democracy. As a result, because we have forgotten Socratic methods, we have elected so many sweet shop owners in our institutions and very few doctors to our politics and to our governments. There are so many sweet shop owners. They will give you, they will tell you so many things using flowery words, and you will be fascinated. Oh yeah, they are good people. They are saying so many things, but rarely we listen to doctors. So we have so many sweet shop owners in our political institutions. Look at the content of political philosophy in the ancient world. There is a huge energy being invested by thinkers in searching about the structure and conduct of political institutions. This tradition has begun with Plato's Republic. Plato portrayed his idea of what does it mean to be an ideal state, an ideal ruler, ideal citizen, ideal military, ideal laws in this book. Ever since Plato, Western political philosophy has been preoccupied with the nature of political institutions. So this tradition has been continued by his disciple Aristotle, his favorite student. Perhaps the oldest and best comparison and analogy or understanding about political institutions was done by Aristotle. He studied 156 constitutions of the days of his day that was prevalent in the ancient Greek city-states, and he contrasted them with the so-called barbarian state. Some states were considered to be barbarian according to ancient Greek people. Aristotle made a typology of governments also. He said monarchy, aristocracy and polity are best forms of government. And he also proposed a bad form of these three types of government. They are tyranny, oligarchy and democracy. So some other political philosophies in the Western world carry forward the practice of institutional methods for understanding political behavior of people in the later part of the centuries. For example, Machiavelli, a modern philosopher who was born in Italy, who wrote the famous book The Prince in 16th century. Montesquieu, a French philosopher who wrote the book The Spirit of Laws in the middle of the 18th century. Alexis de Tocqueville, a French philosopher, was the forebearer of the theory and practice of government and institutions in political science. De Tocqueville's analysis became the essence of institutional approach to the study of political behavior. You may refer to Tocqueville's book, The Democracy in America. In this book, he compared American democracy with that of French democracy. And he had great respect of our American democracy too. And an English writer, Bagehot, wrote the famous book, The English Constitution, in 1867. It was a significant contribution to the development of institutional approach in the modern world. In his study of the British cabinet, Bagehot has drawn important points of comparison with the executives in America. He compared British cabinet with the American executive. So it was, however, James Bryce, Lowell and Ostrogowski. James Bryce, Lowell and Ostrogowski in the 19th century that institutional approach evolved into full swing, into a complete mature idea. The American Commonwealth, written in 1888, the Modern Democracies, written in 1921, were two significant books of James Bryce. In Modern Democracies, Bryce focused on the theory of democracy and examined the working of legislatures. and their decline in the modern world. Lowell's work, Government and Parties in Continental Europe, that was written in 1896, and another book, Public Opinion and Popular Government, written in 1913, where he undertook some interesting studies about France, Germany, and Switzerland. And he proposed a comparative study of institutions prevalent in these countries. Similarly, Ostrogowski's study, Democracy and Organization of Political Parties, that was published in 1902, it aimed to understand the hypothesis, the democratic or the oligarchic character of political parties. He was saying that political parties had either democratic or oligarchic character. It was a pioneering work of that time. Friends, you see, since the time of Socrates to the time of, Ostrogowski, several writers have invested their energy in understanding and proposing theories about political institutions, because for them, study of politics means the study of institutions, how executives work, that is cabinet, office of prime minister, office of the president, legislatures, speaker, upper house, lower house, civil service, bureaucracy. So they had invested a lot of their intellectual energy to understand how institutions work, how they deliver services to people. For them, study of politics simply meant study of institutions and its interactions with the people. Friends, with these points, I would like to wind up my lecture. I don't know whether I am successful in inciting some doubts in your mind. Anyway, I hope you got some kind of spark in your heart. If you still maintain that spark, please drop a line in my YouTube comment box. I will reply to you. Thank you for listening.